Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine, and your host of the RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs and all-around tech guru. What's going on, Greg?
Not much. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. All things considered, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big all things considered this week.
Yeah, you're not kidding, bro. It's no secret. I won't touch on it too much. Obviously, things are kind of crazy right now, but I do cherish this time that we get to spend together. Right?
Yeah.
Really, there's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. It's my friends and my family, and I have a lot of stuff going on, projects. Obviously, the magazine, doing the show with you. That's all great, but really, it comes down to my friends and my family, and those are the two things that I really care most about. And luckily today, our guest is someone who I consider to be a very good friend. He's one of our own, an in-house guy. His name's Ed Zinke. You're going to have to give me his title again because it was a long title.
Director of Business Development for Power Automedia.
That's right. He's a wealth of knowledge. He has a resume as long as my arm. The guy's been around for a very long time, and as far as the industry is concerned, and he knows so many people. He's taught me so much about all this, and I'm forever grateful to him. We're separated by age and where we're from and background, but we're still great friends. We share a lot: music, cars, culture, and he's a totally cool guy. So I guess let's bring him on.
All righty.
Hey, what's up, Ed?
Thank you, Ed. Well, I really appreciate the invite, and boy, what a lead-in! I hope I can live up to those expectations there, Vinny. I mean, gee Louise. I mean, we're just workmates and enjoying the hobby together,
Yeah, exactly. But you know what, Ed? That's really what it comes down to. Finding common ground with people, right? I didn't know too much about you when I started at Power Automedia. But I remember one day, the first day that you spoke to me, I was wearing, it was my second day, and I was wearing Ed's Showtime Auto Body t-shirt, Bakersfield, California, free plug for them. And you came up to me, you said you really liked my shirt because it had Ed on it, and we've just been friends ever since, and I really value your friendship.
Well, appreciate that. I think there was a funny car on that shirt too that was there, which caught my attention, and I went, "Yeah, this guy is going to be all right." So it's
yeah, that's right. It was a second-gen Camaro, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right too. Yeah. So absolutely,
Ed. I feel fortunate that we can spend this time together. It's not a really long time in the grand scheme of things, but if we get to talk for about an hour, that's great. You and I always trace ideas. You've helped me conceptualize a lot of editorial on Street Muscle and now Rod Authority, and I'm continually learning from you. And so I guess I want to give some insight into who you are to all of our viewers and our readers, and we can start there. Where you're from, how you got started, and I'll let you take it away.
Well, appreciate that. It started a long time ago. You can tell from my hairstyle. And it hasn't always been that way, but Southside Chicago boy, born and raised, moved out to California in '99. But I mean, got my roots in the Midwest, still have them there. And, really that was pretty much the hotbed of what was going on, in drag racing. Obviously, Southern California had, the magazines and that, but deep down, it was those grassroots in the Midwest there. And, we enjoyed, US 30 and Great Lakes Dragway and Cordoba. And, so we were out and about and doing a thing. And I started with my father. He was a car guy. The other thing was too, back in those days, you took care of your car. So it was every guy, I think for the most part, probably got to go out to the garage with dad and probably change up the oil. Drop the plug in the muck and have to dig it out. So you had that big mitt full of oil and that all over your hands. And, and then of course it was the semi-annual change of the spark plugs, points, condenser, that kind of thing. So, back the cars weren't as sophisticated. So most folks, worked on them themselves, and that's how, I mean, we got out there and worked with our parents and had a great time doing it. So kind of where it all started.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ed. Same for me, and I think same for a lot of guys. They get into it, just turning some wrenches with Pop, or watching him do that, and you're holding the flashlight and maybe getting yelled at, like, "Hey, I'm working over here." But that's good stuff. So, do you remember the first project that you and your old man worked on?
Yeah, my dad and I remember working on a 53 Ford that was his daily cruiser back and forth. And for one of his 3 days of his 5 week or 5 day vacation, 3 of those days we took and rehabbed the car, gave it an overhaul on the engine. And I remember working on that. And then after that, the next one that I really spent a lot of time of, and actually I think we got a couple of photos here and there, but was a 62, I think it was, a Conaline with a straight six. And, we had the jump seat that came from beautiful J.C. Whitney that went on there. My dad was nice enough to actually put a seatbelt on it. So when he hit the brakes, I didn't slide all the way into the windshield. I stopped someplace in between. But
hey, Ed, do you have the photo numbers for those?
That one, I don't have a photograph of that old Econoline. Actually, I may have it someplace, but that was probably the first one, because I remember actually when we first fired it up, we drove it around the block, and I was sitting next to the engine, and the valve cover was off, and the rocker arms were doing their thing, and I'm watching them and watching the oil spurt, get the little trinket out. But that's so I mean, it was kind of the thing that all of us grew up on, and obviously we're all car folks and crazed over it, and as we got into junior high and that, obviously got the car craze because the older guys running around the neighborhood with their cars. And then of course the magazines were the big influence, which takes me down a whole different road in my career, and I've been blessed to be able to take and go there.
I know you guys were heavily influenced by what was going on in the Midwest as far as racing was concerned. And you did a little bit of racing yourself. But I'm curious what influence like Southern California car culture had throughout the rest of the country. Was it significant? Were you guys watching what was going on out here and mimicking it, or was it the other way around? Or how did that work?
Oh, we followed what was going on in Southern California car culture via the magazines, obviously. I still have my collection. A lot of it's behind me, with some other things that are attached to it, but that I bought originally. And we took classes like world history because the book was big enough where we could fit the magazine, be it hot rod or popular hot rodding, in the damn book and read about what was going on while the teacher was talking and still pass the test. So, but I mean, and I think the guys there, I think they would tell you for the most part that they were, obviously covering major events around the Midwest, but the day-to-day stuff, the features that you saw, the project builds, Project X, the VW that I tried to emulate, or partly, that was in popular hot rodding about 71. Those were all things that we followed along, and then went to our local speed shops, bought the parts, brought them home, and found places to build them. As you saw there is a picture of let's see if I can find it, but picture of us working on out of the garage, out of the basement, actually. So,
yeah, I love that photo. You showed me that one a while back, and I asked you to give it to us so we could show it while we're talking here. But it just goes to show that I mean, like to your point, things were a little bit easier back then. You could take out the whole engine, and take it into your basement, and build it, and take it back out, and it's pretty cool. But
yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah, there it is. That one happens to be a Volkswagen, which was kind of actually, my Volkswagen was a daily driver that never let me down completely, just all the time. And the reason being is that, as a car guy and reading the magazines, you're always influenced and wanting to make it go faster. So those are a couple of high school buddies of mine, Frank Goodnight, Ed Boda, and we hauled that engine down in the basement because it was about 10 below. And my folks had gone to Hawaii. So my grandfather was staying at the house watching myself and my sister. And lo and behold, I got the big idea, because it wasn't too bad. We're going to hop this thing up while my dad's gone so he doesn't notice, right? Yeah, right. Well, so we hauled that, and then it turned to like blistering cold. So we ended up having to haul that down in the basement because it was about 10 below, and rebuilt it, got it back, and got it back in the car before they got home from their vacation. The only trouble, which I shared with you, was that I had put some 13-to-1 slugs in it, in pistons and cylinders, and then put a 2-barrel, and I actually had 2 Webers on it for a while too. But the 13-to-1 pistons and that compression didn't work very well with the 6-volt system. And more often than not, I would have to either park on a hill so I could roll and drop the clutch, or my girlfriend then, which is now my wife, Nancy, actually, she would either come out or have my one of my now brother-in-laws come out and give me a push to get me started, to get me home at night. So as much as we love, and of course, this is before the days of, the high torque starters and all of those kind of things. They weren't even thought of. So, but it kind of shows you, you go for that big high horsepower thing, you got to remember there's a few things else, so you got to kind of follow along.
Well, luckily those Volkswagens aren't too heavy. But I'm curious, Ed, the first 2 projects that you mentioned, the first one working on with your pop, and then the second one, they're both Fords. And I know you still have a Ford, but you also have a Chevy. Would you consider yourself to be any brand centric at all?
I love everything, and I love everything the guys do and gals do out there. I don't know if I've ever been accepted into the Mopar religion per se. But mostly Ford and Chevy stuff, yeah, they've accepted me. And part of it goes to, quite honestly, I mean, the cheapest thing you could build was a small block. Ford parts cost a little bit more, and Mopar, well, that was, serious. But, going back, I mean, I started this whole thing. I was 14 years old. My dad bought me a 58 Ford pickup, so Ford again. 312 Y block in it, and it had not stopped running in that, and that's how I got started. I basically rebuilt the truck. He helped me, of course, but took it all down, rebuilt the 312, put it back in it, got it running. The typical, if it doesn't start on a hill at a driveway, hook a chain to it and pull it till it gets running, which we did. And, I turned and then got it running, and he turned it for me and sold it to a guy at work. And I put that money to another one, and another one after that, and after that. And, I have some photographs that I've shared with you. I've got some, part of it is that back then, it cost money to buy the film, had to get it redone. So, those are all parts we could have bought. So there's some photos that are just plain missing. Some we turned so quick we never took photos of them.
There's
but
so much.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
There's so much that we take for granted nowadays. I mean, you're just having a phone on, or a camera on your phone, and that's a luxury that it's crazy, but that's true. So Ed, you kind of started flipping these cars all while you were working and going to school, I'm sure. And eventually you got to, I don't want to gloss over some of those cars. One was a C2 vet, right?
65.
C3.
Yes,
Yeah, C2. And then you had, I want to say a Buick as well.
No, I had, my first car was a 50, besides the truck and 2 or 3 others, I had a 56 Ford. I don't think I have a photo of that. And turned that one pretty quick. But I had the vet there. That's the 65 vet. And I had bought that. That's one of those cars that, had seen some pretty rough business and some pretty rough action prior to me getting my hands on it. But that happens to be a photo, probably the dead of summer in Chicago. So it's hot, humid, all that good stuff. And you can see we're hanging over there, and that is then my girlfriend, now my wife, Nance. And in the corner here, you can kind of see my dad. My dad was a machinist by trade who got his degree in mechanical engineering, and but still was hands-on and would come out to the garage either when requested and sometimes not, but when you're trying to sneak something in. But like in that particular case, he was lapping the valves, doing a valve hand valve lapping job for me on a set of old Fuely heads. So
that's awesome. Greg,
Shortly
can you throw
thereafter,
that
we got
photo?
into an argument about the camshaft that was going in, but so.
Say what, Vinny?
Can you throw that photo up one more time? I just want to point out some stuff that I really love about it. So here in the corner, you can see like a Sinclair, looks like a Sinclair oil can or a fuel can. And look at that, Ed, that mustache, that hair. Just, I love this photo so much. It's to the era, and those are things I really love. I just wanted to say that.
That's about 74. Well, not about. It was 74 because that car actually paid for my college, at least part of my tuition. My dad took care of part of it too. But yeah, my father worked at Sinclair when he came back from World War II, and he had served on troop ships and then finished up his term on the Midway, which is down in San Diego. And I was lucky enough to take him there, which they treated him like gold. It was fantastic. But he came back and actually was cutting the grass at a refinery in East Chicago, Indiana, and ended up being a machinist, a foreman, and then got his degree, and was the kind of guy that could walk up to a compressor that's as big as your house and actually put his hand on it and can tell you pretty doggone close within, how far off or where you needed to put some weight to balance the thing out. So very proud. I so enjoyed the time together. He would also a lot come out and, fix my woes. Be it, I used to always think that I had to torque everything down and then give an extra quarter turn, which used to end up with a lot of broken bolts, and showed me how to drill them out. So I'm pretty good at that now too.
Well, Ed, you definitely have a very meticulous and mindset and an eye for detail. That's something that I've noticed about you, and I think that maybe this isn't true for everybody, but certainly for myself, and alluding to what you just said, we get a lot of those things from people that we spend a lot of time around, usually our parents. And if you have a mechanical mind, it usually stems from there.
Yeah.
So you had these Fords, and then you get this Chevy, you have this Vet, and then you started vanning, right? Was that the last car that you had before you got into the whole van thing?
No, actually, I mean, I sent you a photo of a Cutlass. I had a 64 Cutlass that actually my uncle had bought new. And that was a pre-production 442, actually, because it was the 330 with a 4-barrel, dual exhaust, 4-speed, plush, bucket seats. I mean, it was a nice, and that's kind of part of the reason that I was able to buy my Chevelle now. Was my wife and I were dating back then in that car, so at least it was a similarity there. I used it for an excuse. It got me by, so I'll use it, right? But so I had that car for a while. The clutch had gone out. I put a clutch in it, but great car, Muncie 4-speed with the with the reverse lockout lift and all that good stuff. And I learned to drive on my cousin's GTO. He had a 65 389 GTO 4-speed, and I was. I was racing when I was 15 on the streets because I didn't know any better, and I could bang the gears a hell of a lot harder because I didn't own them than he did. So that is the next car after the 442. That's a 68 Fairlane, big block car, but that was the car that after the Vet and when I was going to college. So I actually had that. It had some Magnum 500s on it. You can probably see it was an automatic car, but good car, dependable. I drove the heck out of it until the door started rotting off of it before I finally got rid of it. But it got me back and forth to college plenty of times, and a lot of fun. But that car actually, there's a story behind that one too, because when my dad went to buy that in '68, my sister and I went to the Ford dealership, and this is when you order a car, and he had aspirations to buy the Mustang too, a Mustang in '68. Right. And it probably wouldn't be a Cobra Jet, but 390, that kind of stuff. And but he took my mom with, and of course my mom decides that what we need to do is make sure the kids can fit. So you guys climb in the car. Well, by the time and I was 15 at the time, going, I'm going to take a Mustang to work, high school, right? But by the time I got myself folded into the back seat of that '68 Mustang, my knees are up by my ears. And, they're trying to explain and I'm explaining to them how I can sit like this for an hour at a time, no problem and that. So obviously we bought the bigger Torino or Fairlane at this point. He didn't want the stripes. And maybe a little bit of he was a little bit of a street sleeper himself. It originally came with just bottle caps on it, and I put the magnums on it and that. But fun car, good car. And then after that was when I started the van. So the first van was I think a 71. I bought about 75. That was the white one, and then the silver one that I used quite a bit was my first brand new purchase, which was a 77 Ford van. So, but I had done about 5 vans in there in between. So, kind of a crazy one. Following the magazines again. There you go.
Exactly. Ed, I actually spoke to our mutual friend Mike Copeland a couple episodes back. If you haven't seen that one, definitely go check it out.
Definitely watched it.
But yeah, he mentioned kind of the same thing. He was into hot rodding, and then once the later 70s started rolling around and cars were being choked by emissions, people started getting into these vans. And I remember when I picked up our latest project on Street Muscle Magazine, Project Heavy Metal, which is a 93 G20, which I've backdated to a classic Chevy van. You were like the only person who got what I was going for. You were the only person who really supported me and was like, "Oh yeah, vans are cool." And I was like, "I know, they're awesome." And so then you started showing me some of those photos, and that last one was really cool. Greg, if you can throw that one back up, that's really. I knew I was all in on the van when you showed this photo to me. You were towing your race car with your van, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And I was like, I got to do it. I got to do that. So tell us about this thing.
Well, that one, that was a culmination of, again, I'd built quite a few. The first van I built was a 70, and I did a couple of them, short and long versions that were, pretty straightforward. A couple of porthole windows, things like that were kind of in vogue, some stripes. This one I kept pretty straightforward with just a silver, but, we added the fender flares and the matching spoiler down below, cut the fog lights through, so gave it kind of a sculptured look. Visor on top, and side pipes, which were, those worked. So got a little bit. But trucks back then actually had more horsepower and more get up and go than the cars did, obviously. So when you kind of torqued on them, you could take and get some power out of them. So it was fun to do. And it had, most of the goodies inside and out, and you can see the headlight covers on it. That was good for a ticket by about 8 o'clock at night. You'd have to get out. It wasn't like you had some nowadays guys would obviously engineer electric, doors to open up and make them go away. Back then we had 4 little snaps on them. You'd pull over on the side of the road, pull the snaps off, take your headlight covers in and keep going on your cruise for the evening. But, of course, then that was back in the day when, and I was joking with Don Lunsford from Doug's Headers the other day, because I posted a photo and we were talking about Jensen coaxial and triaxial speakers. And I think that one had 6 pairs plus 2 in the, 6x9s were in the front doors above the front because there was a console up above, and then we had, of course, graphic equalizers and whatever chip amps that we could get our hands on at the time, but, trying to rock it. So fun stuff.
Yeah, and I really love it. And, I was really impressed when you showed me some photos of the interior. You totally customized and made like a partition, a wall. It looked like you had full on furniture in there. It was really cool. Tell us about it looks like a Camaro that you're pulling behind that thing.
Yeah, that was a 2nd gen Camaro. My neighbor and I, we took, and that was a stock car that we built in his garage, actually. And as well as the trailer. That trailer was, and boy, don't hold me to the retail price, but this goes back, Dillon Enterprises, which was Ray Dillon, who I'm still friends with, and came by Power Automedia a year and a half ago to meet with Bobby and myself. But at one time, he was probably one of the strongest. I mean, he really built a nice piece for circle track guys, and we had used, actually, that's one of his trailer kits that it was a U-welded. And then the car had his front suspension. You had to run 69 or early Camaro front snubs. And it actually was ASA. It was qualified for ASA. It ran a big block, it was heavier than hell in the nose. So when you put it in the corner to go into the corner, you were going. Getting it to turn was another story. But, those are all the things you learn over time, But we had a lot of fun with it. Man, it was a great great fun for guys. We had a couple different cars and disappeared from that racing for a while. Came back towards the end, back in the '90s. But we started in drag racing and moved into circle track just for some fun and maybe a little more track time. It was kind of one of those deals. If the car was running halfway decent, neither one of us had any talent, but you flip a coin to see who got to wear the helmet that night and who got the greasy coveralls and got to do the adjustments once you got on the track. So, but fun stuff. That's how you learn. That's what it's all about. It's that whole get out there and do it.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask you next, Ed. From just push starting your own car to welding your own trailer. It seems like back then, you had to do a lot more and figure things out a lot more on your own. Obviously, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have YouTube, you didn't have people showing you exactly how to do things. Do you think that that's been a detriment to our generation, or is that a good thing that we have all this information, or has that kind of handicapped us and made us lazy, where you can just purchase things and you don't have to think so much on how to build them or put them together?
Oh, I was all about to say it's a great thing, which it really is, because you can finish your projects. The only thing I will tell you is that in those days it did allow us we had to scratch our heads a bit. I don't know that in today's world that you have that stand back and just, obviously when you're building your project, you stand back and you can visualize what it's going to look like with the wheels in your mind and all of those things. Then you had to kind of figure out how to fabricate. How am I going to get it out of the clouds? The front end is sitting way high. How am I going to get it out of here? And of course you've always been taught not to put, a torch on springs and things like that, because you're going to change the molecular structure and then get way into that kind of thing. We had, my neighbor used to work at a rail car company that he welded up tank cars. So he had a welder. So he taught me how to stick weld, which my neighbor lived right next door. And there was two, myself and the young guy, and this guy lived right kind of kitty corner from us. He's the one that taught us. We actually used his welder on part of that trailer as we were working on it. By then we had gotten a welder, and then I think it was a Hobart back then, and then finished up the chassis on the car and things. So, I'd say there was more hands-on a personal level as opposed to today, where you can, when you're about to go in the garage, even myself, I will take, and as opposed to looking for books, how to weld, or, the magazines were our gospel for what was cool, what was going on, and that was our main way of getting things. We had more maybe personal contact with people that knew how to do things, or hand me down from dad to me, or my father-in-law, who was also was a machinist as well. So he was a great guy that would jump on some of these projects and lend a hand, and obviously lend an idea as well. I think it's great for today. With the availability of parts, it solves so many of the issues that we went through, and maybe we cobbled them together and not the most safest way. Where now in today's world, you have a lot of fantastic products that are available, and even choices at price points that help you finish your project and get out there maybe just a skosh quicker too.
Exactly.
It's great.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I see both sides of that coin. I see people, not maybe developing those skills like welding or fabrication because they can just buy parts off the shelf, and that's great, to your point, to have those options. But I think getting those trades back into our schools, maybe that's something that we need to, as a society, look into. People really working with their hands and developing that mechanical mind. But I want to shift gears here for a second, Ed, because you were talking about all these manufacturers that are creating these products for people, and that's really something that taken away from you since we've started working together, and that's just the way that you treat people and the way that you work with people. It's something that I really admire, and I try to emulate that whenever I'm working with my own clients. And basically, I guess I want to take a step back and ask you how you went from being a reader of of these magazines to eventually working on these magazines, being a publisher, and then how you develop that skill set that I'm describing, working with these clients.
Chase the dream. Best way I can sort of describe it. I mean, if I give anyone knowledge, how do you get there? What do you do? I mean, basically, it's set a goal and chase a dream. I mean, I started, and jokingly, I sent over something to Greg, it's got a bunch of business cards. I saved a bunch. But when I first got rolling, I mean, I was working in an auto center at Montgomery Ward's as a parts guy and could see where I wanted to go, and I wanted to get in their buying office and set my goals. And I was lucky enough, God willing, that I was able to achieve those and left as their national sales and marketing director after being a car audio buyer and an antifreeze buyer, and made friends along the way.
Holy
Many
cow.
that I stayed together with. And that was a long career there. But at the same time, I also had a couple friends go over to Peak and split fire spark plugs, which was emerging at the time. But in the course of that, we had, and believe it or not, I mean, with all the ads that a retailer like that, big box retailer, was doing for service and tires and all of that, we actually brought hot rod and four-wheeler and off-road Petersons, or four-wheel and off-road at the time, and ran some promotions with support from the manufacturers of the products back when the first truck craze was going on, which was more, fix them up, as far as add-on and things like that. But that's how I got to know the magazine guys. And one thing led to another, where I went from Montgomery Ward's over to Peak and Splitfire, following two friends that I had in the buying office. Rick Jago and Jerry Riccioni were gracious enough to bring me on board. And I had a great time there working with the guys. And that's where I got to know all the magazines, because obviously we were doing lots of marketing and lots of promotions, and everything from ads to we were the sponsors of the first 5 power tours for Hot Rod that ended up in Chicago, the Chicago stop of the tour, when they used to do that. And, there were stories ago, we unveiled a car on that tour. We did promos and that. So we took some of the retailing things that I learned that we would do from marketing there to consumers to get them into the stores, brought that with me and utilized that there, but then also was gaining and building, again, more relationships in the, in the magazine world, working with folks there and everything going on. Built a roadster with Barry Lobeck that we unveiled on the power tour, and then Hot Rod did specials on it. We actually had it on TV. There's a photograph of that there someplace. But I mean, this is when that whole tour and that was exploding. Street Machine Nationals was a big thing going on, but we also had the opportunity to go to these other events, and these were new and exciting events. And in each case, I was just kind of setting, I'd really like, well, that looks like a lot of fun. And I'd really like to go there and working with them and going after it.
Ed, was this by design? I mean, you were working at Montgomery Ward. I assume you were going to college at that time. I'm not sure what you were studying, but is that something that you were working toward, or were you just at that point climbing the ranks where you're at, and then these opportunities presented themselves and you positioned yourself in a way where you could move?
First store I worked at for Montgomery Ward's, and I was actually going to a junior college. And that was, if you've watched the Blues Brothers, where they drive through the mall, that was the store I was at, which was Dixie Square in Harvey, Illinois. And this was obviously they had closed the store, but that was the first store that was relatively close to the school. And I worked my way into the managerial development program with Ward's, which then after I got done, I came back and started in a program there, ran auto centers, was at numerous different auto centers, and then got into their buying office, advertising manager, buyer. I was buyer for antifreeze, obviously. Now you understand the Peak connection there. And then car audio, so worked with Pioneer and Clarion. And even today, I mean, and this was in the 80s, So, but even today, the gentleman who I work with with Clarion is Tom Bellistreri, who is the USA sales VP and director, I believe, for Spall USA, who we work with.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah.
So, you have these relationships that go on forever. Brian Bolander at Old World Industries, or Peak, him and I just barely crossed paths as I was leaving there, and that was for a short stint for a company that had the GM licensing for some products, which are still on the racks from the team that I had there at O'Reilly stores. If you look at the lift equipment, but that also got me into California and the magazines, Chemical.
That's so. So you made that transition. I know there's a story here with Peak, I believe, right?
Yep.
There's
stories everywhere. It depends where you want to.
I'm sure, but there's you happen to be behind, and I got this information from Greg earlier, and I'm surprised you hadn't told me until now. But
I know where you're going.
The pre-mix antifreeze. Is that true?
Yeah. What had happened was, this goes back again, into, this is actually in the 90s, and ethylene glycol had gotten outrageously expensive. And of course, Peak and all of our other brands that we made private label for many companies, and that, they were looking for an alternative. Obviously, you can use rebates, but even with a rebate, you couldn't get down below, I want to say it was $6 a gallon, like $5.99 even after rebate, which was pretty pricey for even back then.
Right.
And the guy's name was Frank Sherry, who was our sales person who took care of Chief Auto, which was back then in a Texas-based regional big house retailer. They're now part of the O'Reilly group. It was Craig and Chuck Checkers and that. But anyhow, he came to us and said, what if? And working with the guys at Old World Industries and Peak and that, we had been doing original fill for truck companies like Kenworth. Obviously a different package of additives and things, but this was 55-gallon drums that would go to the factory, they'd fill them up. One thing led to another, and working with the guys in manufacturing, and we were able to come up with premix antifreeze that we could provide to these guys, and the price point was right. I think at that time we were down to $3.99, so obviously Chief Auto could be out there $2 cheaper than their competitors. And we changed up. Obviously, it was an automotive package of additives and anti-seize and anti-rust and all of that stuff. So, there's a Peak brand that had that same Peak configuration, just in a mixed configuration, and we announced it out to the industry. And to this day, I walk into the stores and I kind of giggle to myself, because I remember making that label late one night at the office and putting it into an envelope and overnighting it to Frank. And Frank came back, because we had to actually get a commitment, because we were going to be mixing this for them. So it was more than just your atypical, I want to buy 3 trucks kind of thing. And the rest is kind of history, and it's fun to see it. So yeah, there was that. We worked on Peak Motor Oil. We worked on, I was there towards the end, but at the beginning of when they were doing like premix and that too. So.
No, that's a genius idea. Very innovative. I can't say that I'm surprised though, Ed. I mean, you bring that same enthusiasm and outside the box thinking to everything that we do as well, and I really appreciate it. So, Ed, I want to take a step back to the original question that I asked you, and kind of examine your these skills that you've developed over a career, right? I was mentioning how you're innovative, you're a forward thinker. Especially at that time, I imagine you're a young man in an industry that's populated by older gentlemen, and you got some fresh ideas. When you became a publisher, how did those tools develop there? Like, you started working with clients and putting together ads and things like that. What was that like, and did that carry over into now?
Well, again, relationships are everything as time rolls on, and I think a lot of and some of it comes down to just plain dumb luck and being blessed in a few cases here and there. But the biggest thing is, for the most part, is anything that I sell, do, or get involved with, I believe in. I asked the same questions whether I was selling a set of tires way back when, or if it was selling a program to somebody, or working on some charity builds that we've done with magazines and stuff. Is, I ask myself, why would I do this? What is the benefit for me, and what is, what it is? It may be branding, it may be, this and that and the other thing. So it's kind of a roundabout, but actually, I guess I just look at anything that I'm doing as to make sure that I quantify and qualify for myself why it's good, would I do it, and or in many cases, to your point, and yes, I was during a time in some of these cases where you had those big, stodgy, dark wood paneling boardrooms that you'd have to go in and present to and stuff, and but the bottom line is, if you're convicted to and believe and that, that shows through, people will give you the opportunity, and then it's up to you to run with it. And
Certainly.
if there's a flaw, fix it and make it right. But so again, how I got into publishing with the magazines was when I was at Montgomery Ward's, but also when I was at Peak Antifreeze. The joke was I was such a car guy, and at the time Peterson was the magazines, obviously, but Glenn Booker, who was my sales guy, I'll call him that. He was just a good friend too, still is. Basically said, "You're such a car guy. We don't move anybody. We don't pay to move anybody. But if you ever get to California, I'm going to snatch you up," kind of thing. And I laughed about it, because at that time I was never going to leave the Midwest and Chicago and born and raised and all that. Well, sure enough, I ended up going, and about 9 months into the program with the company I was with, they came knocking, and it was Doug Evans, former senior chair board member, but at the time he worked with Glenn Booker in the Chicago sales office, and then had moved over to family events and was doing events that I had gotten involved with, and that. So, all these relationships that you build, they never go away, and treat them with respect, because you never know how things may come about, because Doug was the one that came calling and said, "I'm back and I'm changing things up." And so I took care of my contractual agreement with, at that kind of company, it was called Test Right, which was the AC Delco jacks and that, and went to, at that time it was EMAP. Peterson had already sold it, was on its third owner. I got to live through, I think, 9 more in 15 years over there. But God, what a joy. If you can imagine being a kid who was sitting in world history class with a copy of Popular Hot Rodding stuffed in the book, because the book was big enough that you could hide it, reading about the Volkswagen that they're building that I had in the parking lot out back, or reading about Project X and what the latest build was on Project X. And then, this is we'll just call it some years later, but I'm sitting in a meeting and have been moved over to Popular Hot Rodding, #1. So one of my favorite magazines. I'd already served time on Hot Rod and Carcraft with Jim Madoff. And lo and behold, they hand me the key. They hand me an octagon key, and I go, "What is this for?" "Well, that's for Project X." Are you kidding me? Lo and behold, Project X was still alive and well, but in storage with about 4 inches of dust on it, and had seen the better days of a couple of editors who, at that point, had given up on it, and the magazines weren't really messing with it. Anyhow, we brought it back out, got it tuned up. It had a nasty big block in it, and was in a kind of a pro touring stance at that time.
Look at that.
Got it back on the road. And then over time, Dr. Jamie Meyer, who's now at PRI as their president, was at GM Performance, Chevrolet Performance, and had a desire to put the only engine that had never been in that car, which is an all-aluminum 427, between the rails and release that at SEMA. So we worked on it together. Some folks don't like it. Some feel that, we did some things to it. But I tell you what, him and I, along with Mike Copeland, who you talked to a couple weekends ago, I watched his show. We babysat that car every step of the way it was in there. And Mike and his team, one of the things that he didn't share with you, but to this day, and I haven't been around the car in about a year, but to this day, on one of the inner inner tubs, wheel tubs in the trunk, is every one of his guys that were on the team at the time had signed that car, which was great. And, I mean, that car probably would have, who knows, management could have looked at it, made it go away, and turned it into a, economic asset as opposed to standing up for it. And I got to thank Hot Rod and the guys that are still there, because that car is still alive and well and is the oldest project vehicle in the world, and has been on more covers, has provided more projects and more readers the opportunity to fulfill some dreams. I mean, you've got a picture of it. If you go Project X Intro, I think it was, is a photo I sent of Mike and his team as they finished it up. And then there's a couple of photos where we actually drove that car. We took it on, what was it called? Tail of the Snake? And so Popular Hot Rodding, once we got it back, we took and drove it and beat on it. There's Mike and his team. That was the day that I went out there, left Engine Masters down in Ohio, came up to GM, where the guys that are all there had worked on the car, and we were just unveiling it for the first time, and for Hot Rod. And then from there, you've got the photo session that Mike did, where he got some burnouts and things like that with the car. We got it back after unveiling the new engines, which is the reason. And everybody blames, and I got to tell you, the craftsmanship in that car, that hood alone, where a young man at the time, and I wish I knew his name, but the young man actually did that entire hood in metal, making the tubes longer, turning those into functional scoops that go down and feed a 14-inch air cleaner that's mounted in the hood that comes down and gently and closes onto what was then the carburetor, I should say, on that new engine that they were promoting. It was just beautiful. I mean, every piece of work on that car was phenomenal, and the car drove and rode great. We had a little few tweaks here and there, but what isn't with Gremlins? But when you put something on a drive like that, and you can see there's some photos, some images of the car where we got to Dolly World, and we actually left the car dirty on purpose and put a sign on it and said, we drove it. It's dirty because we drove it. And you can see all the brake dust in the brakes and all of that. And then we have the poster out in front of it, which I've got a copy of that for you, by the way.
I appreciate it.
That's what our hobby is about too, is driving these cars. And that's what I love about what I see from, everybody that gets involved, young, old. You may not be a patina person. Personally, I'm not. But you know what? I love what they do to the car underneath. It's like Ivan with that F100 he's building right now. He's doing it right. You've got QA1's full complement underneath. You've got the transmission from Tremec and all of that going on, a Coyote going in. That's going to be a great vehicle and a fun drive vehicle.
I agree.
I tend to like to bury myself in paint purgatory for about a year and a half. Why, I don't know. Other than the fact, I do like doing body work.
Because you are a patient and meticulous man, Ed. The rest of the world, not so much. Especially in our instant gratification filled world. People don't like to wait for stuff. But
see, I look at my cell phone and I go, I can wrap my 800 sandpaper around this and use it as a block, and get that corner, especially something like my Chevelle that's like a bread box on wheels. I mean, that thing is as square as it's unbelievably square. But that's the things. Again, I like to keep my hands busy. Obviously, you can tell.
You'll be happy to know, Ed, because this is something that you gave me flack for before, because I hate doing body work. I hate it. I can't stand it. Sanding especially. And I think a lot of people can relate. But we got Project Snake Eyes, and you want to talk about patina, crusty, rusty car. So I'm gonna tackle the body work on that thing, and then I have that 71 El Camino that needs a little bit of love. So we got some body work stories that are coming up for Street Muscle, and those will be cool tech stories that I think need to be revisited, because maybe people haven't done them in a while.
They're great. They are great stories. It's a great thing it has, you know what? I mean, for me, it's therapeutic. I like doing things that keep my hands busy. I work all day on a computer. So I need to do things after hours that get me through that. And, bodywork happens to be one of them. I'm not a bad squirter, but obviously, but painter. But obviously when I'm going to trust somebody to do, the final paint job. Because, but I mean, I like my 40 when I first built it. It was white. I mean, I did that paint job in the garage, following a story in the magazine. Put the plastic sheets here and there, and put the fan over here, and that'll pull everything out. Yeah, right. I can tell you. After about 10 minutes, I couldn't find the car, but when I got the paint on it, and when I got done color sanding and then laid the clear on it, it actually looked pretty nice until we went back and rebuilt it in 2002. So,
well,
that,
I think,
I mean,
things have gotten a lot more sophisticated since then. People painting, I have a compendium of photos that I use for social media, and a lot of those are from back in the day, like some that you've shared with us. And we've come a long way from people painting, on their lawn or in their backyard with dust everywhere. There's still people that do that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, things have gotten a little bit crazier. But
if you got the lacquer coming out of the gun just right, you could get it to lay there about 30 seconds before it would kind of sit, and that way I could avoid the runs. Plus, the dirt wouldn't land in it by the time that it started drying, kind of thing. So, with lacquer, I didn't have a problem. I still don't. I mean, I airbrush stuff all the time with lacquer, but yeah, some of the fancier paints, and when you get into really doing some, I mean, I did graphics way back when and stuff, and but again, I mean, it's just anything with this hobby is 90 to 95%. Just get off your butt and do it. Okay. After that, the 5% knowledge, and there's so many places now, as you've already said, to get the knowledge, be it your computer, your cell phone, ask a friend. Obviously, there's people that'll give you plenty of information, a lot of it being wrong, but, I mean, we had that back in the day too. But, it's just a matter of just go out there and get active, do it. And that's what I really appreciate from anything that I see somebody build.
Me too.
May not be that car, conversely, I love four-door hardtops. Give me a 56, 57, 55 Chevy four-door hardtop. Somebody had on Facebook the other day a post about that. What do you think? Matter of fact, I know it was real deal steel. And I love those cars because there was a short time frame when America was building those more doors, and I always joke with with the more door car. But when they didn't have the molding around it and it looked sleek, and when those windows went down, it was a triple car, I mean, it's, matter of fact, some of those roof lines actually are as cool, if not cooler, than a two-door hardtop.
And any Tri-5, I think, is like the quintessential hot rod. You talk about earlier, you mentioned Project X and everything that went into it. I mean, if you ask someone from another country or someone who's not necessarily into cars to describe a hot rod, they'd probably describe a Tri-5, probably a 57.
Yeah.
But you know what, Ed? It's I think your attention to detail and that meditation that you get when you're working on those projects that maybe we've lost because we're in this instant gratification age, and we need to get back to that. But it brings up another one of your hobbies that you've built some notoriety with, I guess, and that's building model cars. And this I don't want to downplay this. For our readers and our viewers, this is not, Ed is not your average hobbyist. You've been on display. I think you've won awards for your models. Tell us about your model building hobby, Ed.
Well, I mean, again, it goes back to, and quite honestly, living in California, I don't have the space where I can afford to have 7 or 8 project cars around. So what do? Scale them down. I guess that's the next best thing. And the other thing, quite honestly, is that it's a whole lot cheaper too. Not always, but relatively so. I had, obviously, like kids, when I was a kid growing up, my first model was the 59 El Camino that had 1,000 parts. I don't know that I got half of it glued together. It was a glue bomb, but hey, I was proud, and that's what we did, until we got old enough to actually start wrenching on the real deal. And but I never really lost, that hobby. I enjoyed the, playing around with it a little bit, and that. I'd come and gone out of the hobby building models. I did it for myself, and then I quit. And then when my son was young, we'd sit together and I'd build. He would build, and I'd of course be like the dad of and jump in and throw a few extra details or whatever onto it, but or help him hold the airbrush and things. And but then kind of went away. I was on Super Chevy at the time, and I worked with Revell on their make and take program, which was they would supply models for people at the car show to bring their kids in, and they could get out of the sun and take a half an hour and sit with their young boy or girl and actually build. We'd give them a model of a car that we got, and they were all Chevrolet based, 57 Corvette, but they were snap togethers. So, but they'd get out of the sun, and at the end of the day, I got a kick out of it because I would walk around the show and see a lot of these youngsters with the models that they built making model noises and running down so it was fun. And so what happened was they had re-released the Chi-Town Hustler. Obviously, I knew that car from growing up on the south side of Chicago, and they would be out at US 30 all the time testing and tuning and that. And so he sent me a model. I went out and got some supplies. I built that. Hey, that was fun. Build another one, build another. But at the time, I also still had my original magazine that was the original popular hot rodding car that had the Chi-Town Hustler, the 68 Charger body, doing a burnout, which they were famous for the smoky burnouts, right? Yeah. So I put my model next to the car, and I took it to work and kind of, that's kind of cool. And then another one, and I had these. So it turned into this thing where I started chasing down old magazines because I could build the cars or vice versa. And the one featuring like that.
That's so cool.
What you got there is a resin body, aftermarket decals, and the magazine I tracked down.
Now, I don't want to gloss over this, Ed, and please tell us more. But for our viewers and our readers, this is not, the casual hobbyist that's describing these things. When he says custom decals, I mean, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong. You order these custom made decals so that it's exactly like the car in the photo. I'm talking about down to the firing order for the spark plug wires. This, Ed, I mean,
the decals you can get from, there's some companies that are great companies out there. Slicks decals, Mike's, Chuck Bonaire, excuse me, who lives in Indy, builds some great decals. Those, I think, on the Ivo car are actually Slicks. And, my thing was, and in that particular case, that was the last car funny car that Ivo actually has. I have the two copies. It's that one on Superstock, and then I have another cover magazine where he actually crashed the car, and that was on the cover. There's an old car craft with the titanium Mustang, and that's pretty accurate. I don't make true, I don't go over labor intensive to the nth detail. I mean, there are some modelers out there that do that, and I applaud their efforts in that. I take them to a point where I feel that I've gave them enough detail that they satisfy me, and to me that. Right. So spark plug wires, if they had batteries in them, you can see like on that one, you've got the chute pack has got a cable on it going down to the frame.
So cool.
Those kind of things. But
did you ever do the Hemi under glass, Ed?
Yeah, I've done 2 or 3 of those. Although they never made it to the cover. So, I've got quite a few models of cars that are not cover cars. The ones that are behind me, if you look behind me, are the ones, and that's part of the museum. That photo that you showed was of the museum. There's some above on a top shelf that are not, like Jim Adolph used to drive the Shady Glen, and I built that. I built 2 of them. I built one for him. I've had
Tell us about
models.
How you got these into the museum here, Ed.
That was Greg, working with Greg over there, and I actually took him a model and one of the covers and left it for him. He wasn't there the day I happened to stop by. This was a few years ago, and just kind of said, I do this and I have these, and would you be interested? Would you want to put them in? Well, this was for the 50th anniversary of the funny car, which is a couple of years ago. And he said, oh my gosh, yeah. So I took, I think at the time, 55 different models like you see there. With the covers, he selected, and I believe there's 44 there.
How many many do you have total, Ed, that you've built, or how many? Yeah, how many do you have total?
Two something.
Holy cow, man, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
The wife was cool with it. She said, as long as you're the one dusting them and keep them out of my way, I'm fine. So, I took over one bedroom in the house. Well, I shouldn't say, I mean, I got the garage where I do some airbrushing, obviously, for the paint work and stuff. But, that's my therapy, as opposed to being a couch potato. I can put the beer on a desk that I'm working on, as opposed to balancing it on my tummy while I watch TV. So,
well,
although
TV
is
Ed,
still playing, but
you have these models that keep you busy, but you still are a car guy, and you have a project, one that we're actually working on some editorial together with, for Street Muscle, and that's your Chevelle, which you've alluded to a couple times. Tell us about that car before.
64 Chevelle, one owner car. It was in basically pretty good. Now, coming from the Midwest, you got to remember, they're pretty clapped out. This is a photo of it. Shortly after I got it, I put some rally wheels on it, and I have the original hubcaps, 14-inch hubcaps still for that, and the Cutlass, by the way. If you notice back that photo on the Cutlass that I had Fentons on it, but this is put some rallies on it. At the time, I was on Muscle Car Review and a few other magazines, so we needed something to do a few projects on. So that's my father at the driver's seat, and I'm in the passenger seat over there. Early shot of it when I first got it, and again, that car was it was in 44 different project builds. There's a picture of it now. You can see the 15-inch rallies have turned into 18s that were wheel Vintiques that I had special offsets because there's not a lot of room in those back fender wells, but we found enough to get, those are 18 by 8s, 8.5s, I think,
Nice.
all the way around. And, but I love the car. It's a driver. It'll do a nice job. It's 4-wheel disc brakes. We called it Bob for bolt-on bow tie.
Oh,
And
cool.
we tried to keep it somewhat where we didn't drastically change things. So like the wheels, you can go back and forth, but it's got bare brakes all the way around, 383 with a lot of hop ups on it, 490 to the wheels.
Wow.
With a big carb. I've detuned it a little bit where I'm running a smaller 600. So it's not as throttle responsive, obviously, but I can get about 13, almost 14 miles to the gallon. And since I drive it more, in that kind of mode than beating the death out of it, I like that better anyhow. So, but it's a test bed. I do something like, what we're working on is with LED taillights, which
That's right.
It's pretty interesting, actually, when you start working on it. We got some taillights from United Pacific that are 23 LEDs as opposed to one little 1157 light bulb back there. And when you see the difference in the photos that Vinny will have on his website here soon, pretty amazing. So I'm not doing drastic things to it anymore. That's kind of, I like driving it much more. In the past, we've done a lot of different stories on it. We had done a story with QA1 on different shock configurations between their adjustables, single adjustable, double adjustable, and some of those. So it served its purpose well. It's a great car. I've driven it. That car I drove to Louisville. It was actually on the floor for the first year when they extended the years. So that was kind of fun. After that, it's made a half a dozen trips to Vegas, Morro Bay with the Carcraft guys for Anti-Tour with Jeff Smith and the guys.
Tell people where they can see it this weekend on Saturday.
This Saturday, we're going to be with Performance Online, who's doing a Corona, or Circle City, which is what Corona is known for, is going to have on Sunday, 8:30, I think, is the get-together. We're kind of timing this, but so they're doing a cruise coming out of Dos Lagos, and we're going to go up and do a little cruise around and probably end up over by their shop and have a little fun. So that's probably another reason why I just, add a little air to the tires or check them, double check the dipstick, and, get behind the wheel and have a little fun. Put the top down.
For our viewers and listeners, if you want to join us, we'll drop a link to POL's website in the comment section below. I'll be out there in my Firebird, and Ed will be out there in the Chevelle. So if you guys want to come stop by, say hi, please do so. We'll be out there, and yeah, check out the comment section below.
Yeah, check out before we leave, or go for a cruise with us.
Yeah, exactly. Ed, so you got the cars, you got the models, but there's something else that I want to ask you about that is, I think, is related to all things automobile, because what do you do when you cruise? You listen to music. It's another one of your hobbies, and that's collecting albums, and it's a hobby that I share. I also collect vinyl. I have what I thought was a sizable collection, but anyways, you and I were part of this online challenge that I think has been going around Facebook and the internet, and that's to share some albums that your top 10 albums that have influenced your musical taste.
Yeah.
And I believe our friend Bobby Kimbrough, he's the one who invited both of us into the challenge, and I've done mine. I want to throw up some photos of the albums that you shared, and during the challenge, we weren't allowed to really expound upon why or how they influenced us.
Sure.
So I'm going to throw them up on screen, and maybe you can do that for us now. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And these won't be in order, by the way, because
so it's a quiz. It's a quiz, huh? Okay. All right, we can deal with that.
I think this was the first one. There you go, Greg.
Oh, geez. Well, all right. So you picked up probably the one unique one. That is, I was in band when I was all through school, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Actually, my son followed along. I played trumpet.
Cool.
And that happens to be, my reason that I do like classical music. You may find me in the car one day listening to classical as much as I would be listening to Led Zeppelin or Floyd or Steppenwolf or anything else. So, but it gave me the appreciation for what it takes. And also, one of the things that, say what you will, whether you're in a rock band or in a bigger band like that, and hopefully a lot of people had the opportunity, it actually teaches you, much like sports, but that teamwork and the fact that, there's no I there. You may get up and play a solo, but if you don't have everybody else to bring it back home, you're out there, man.
So when was the last time you touched your trumpet, Ed?
It's been a few years. My son and I grabbed our trumpets together. He was much better than I was as he went through school, but it's been a few years since him and I picked them up and played them, but I'm sure the valves probably still work,
Right on. Okay, so let's throw up. Again, these aren't in order, but
interesting pick, by the way, that was an interesting pick. Out of all of them, I didn't know whether I should put that up, and
I got all of them because I'm an audiophile, just like yourself. I love music as much as I love cars, and if I was if I had any talent musically, then maybe I would have pursued a career there. But as it were, I got into cars more. So here's the second one, Ed.
Zeppelin 3. Love them all, but I just have that. I just like 3 a little bit more. It's a little more acoustic, and that's kind of my thing.
Correct me.
What do you say about a band like that?
Yeah. Was this when they had gone to India, I believe, and started recording, and they were using like some sitars and some unconventional instruments?
Oh no, this was much way before that. Zeppelin 3 was way before that, and this is the album. I don't know if you have a copy, but this is the album you can spend hours spinning the little disc that changes the pictures and the cover.
Yeah, I don't have that album. I have 1 and 2 and Physical Graffiti. I need to add this one to my collection.
Hours of fun.
Okay. So moving along, what else do we have? I'll just throw a couple more of these up, Ed. No big deal. But I'm surprised that you didn't do Jim Croce, being from the south side of Chicago.
You know what? I do not have any Jim Croce.
Oh, you got to get it. I have one, and it's one of my favorite albums. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're a fan.
I mean, it was good music. I mean, I guess I was a little more rock head and southern rock, and again, going back to the van, you know, uh, having Jim Croce come out of it might have made me a bit more red than everybody else or something. I don't know. I remember the songs and stuff, and but I don't know. I again, just a little bit. I mean, Pink Floyd. What do you say? I mean, geez.
So what's the story behind this one here, Ed? You got it's there we go. It's you got ZZ Top.
ZZ Top. Now notice you're a collector, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you can appreciate this. That you can take a look. You can see that album cover, and you can see where the vinyl is, right?
Oh yeah.
You know darn well that is a original release.
Yeah.
As are most of all of everything that I put up and everything that you see on the rack, which I do have a pretty good assortment. But I pale in comparison to my brother-in-law. Just absolutely has got all sorts of stuff. But ZZ Top was one of those bands. This takes me back to first year of college. Jesus Just Left Chicago. Come on, really?
Yeah.
How can you not? Right? There's a few songs in your life, if you live in that city, that you have to, stop and just pay tribute to. That being one of them. But I love that whole album. It's hard to pick one of their albums or not, and I've been blessed to be able to see him in concert. Great stuff. I actually got to meet Billy one time, during the hot rod days and some of the cars. There's a great car guy that helps support our hobby and what we do, and
definitely still to this day. Yeah.
Great guy.
I think most recently they shot a video out in the desert. The I want to say the Salt Flats. They took this crazy hot rod out there, and they were driving it around for their video. Very cool. I think Cheap Sunglasses is probably my favorite by them.
Well, I mean, I've got Eliminator. If I was to turn the camera right now, Eliminator is at the top of it's an Oakley display that is full of models that with, so yeah, they are definitely at the top of the list. Great guys. And,
okay, well, let's do one more. I'll just pick one at random, and let's see.
Memories all over.
Yeah, well, I knew that there would be good stories with all these, Ed, because you had the van. You always tell me about going to these concerts and seeing these people live, and it makes me nostalgic for this time that I wasn't even a thought yet. Just to be able to see some of these bands who are my favorites live, I got to live vicariously through your memory because they're so freaking cool, man.
I have to thank my wife. And again, besides, she had worked at Montgomery Ward's back then too. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, but the way to get to concerts, Steppenwolf was a great, what can you say, John Kay, and just his great songs. And pretty much on the of what's the cusp of what's going on today, and being somewhat revolutionary for their time, and carrying the theme of what we young people at that time were dealing with too. So, but got a chance to see them. The other albums a lot of the albums I posted were actually people that I've been blessed to see. I mean, Zeppelin I was able to see a couple times. Pink Floyd.
Your wife Nancy, she was the kind of the catalyst there. How did that work out?
Well, I was lucky enough. She worked in the customer service area at the Ward store, and obviously would be in the store early. So Ticketron was the place to go to get your tickets back in the day. And since she was in the store, she didn't have to stand in line, and would actually have her responsibility was to fire up that machine, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes before store started. Well, all right, fire up the machine and spit out 6 tickets because we're going to the concert. so we got, I don't want to say, we bought what we could afford, obviously. It wasn't like I could buy these choice seats or stuff, but a lot of fun, and got a chance to see a lot of great bands in their prime, if you will. So what we bought and brought home in vinyl, we watched.
Well, Ed, you touched on something just a moment ago when we put up Steppenwolf there, and Right or wrong, there's some things going on in our country right now, and there's a lot of youth out there, right? And music has typically been the voice of that youth, and I think that's what you're kind of alluding to. And I know that you wanted to touch on kind of passing the torch with what we do to our youth. Do you think there's a correlation there? How can hot rodding save the world, Ed?
Well, you know what? I mean, it's just a matter of that friendship that you build, the friends that you develop, and sharing of information and sharing of what you're so passionate about. I think is what makes a huge difference in bringing about, and sharing with and showing that next generation. And don't don't tell them how to do it. Just tell them what you're looking to try and do, and let them impress you on how they do it.
Right.
And just share. I mean, if they get into a stumbling block or something, well, if I was doing it, I'd go this way, but or maybe you want to think about this. But our hobby gets you to do things, gets you to mentally think about things. The payoff is you've got a really cool ride. It's fun to drive. It gets you some coolness factor. And at the end of the day, you learn something too. And all those things go together, and it's a great opportunity. I was, during my time as a publisher, working with Popular Hot Rodding and the Engine Masters Challenge. We had moved that program over to University of Northwestern Ohio, and literally they ran a class in their school for who could be on and come join us and actually volunteer for the week that we were there. And it was such a joy every year to have anywhere from 70 to I think 130, 140 students who would volunteer to come work on with our participants on their engines to get them set up and ready to go on dynos and be part of the competition. And I mean, all they got was a t-shirt and some lunches, right? But it was such fun to be able to do that to this day, I mean, I'll walk through a show and I'll hear my name called, and hopefully I remember them. Most times it clicks, or they will be nice enough to kind of allude to the fact I did Engine Masters in this year or whatever it might have been. And it's so great to run into those people. The other thing we were able to do is one of the years, Ed Zinke and Nick Arias Jr. came out, and I got to have where in the Student Union Center, we had those guys bench racing with the students. There was probably 250, and it grew to maybe 400 students. But at that time, I don't know. Then it just seemed like we saw more and more faces showing up as the guys were just, bench racing and fielding questions. And, Iski was talking about being the first SEMA president in the show, what it is today that everybody obviously wants to go to, when it was under Dodger Stadium, things like that. So being able to share that with that next generation, and hopefully that, plants a seed that they want to take and do, kind of like my car. Hopefully it appeals to a few folks out there, and they would want to build something similar, or some of the tricks or some of the things that I did, they find interesting and want to utilize. But ultimately, I mean, it's just, our hobby has been so good to me and to all of us involved in bringing in, that next generation, you included. I've worked with generational editors, and I've been blessed to be able to work with a lot of great folk, share a lot of the same thoughts, bench race like you alluded to at the beginning of the show, a lot of opportunities together. A lot of the things that we were able to bring to the readers were, quite honestly, ideas that the editor had and goes, how can we make this happen? And again, going back and believing in what you're doing and things, we were able to create some magazines, some events that we brought out that were helped and were sponsored by people. You can't do these by yourself. So, the manufacturers out there saw the value in it, joined in with us, and whether it was gear vendors on midnight drags to, Coker Tire with their Phoenix brand and Ford Performance and all these others that joined in with Elapsed Times on nostalgia drag racing and old school stuff, to Camaro Now when the new Camaro came out. So besides the stable out there, those are all the things that you can do and bring about. And, and, it's just a lot of fun, and it's fun to see what people do with it.
I totally agree, Ed. It's and all the while you're learning valuable skills, how to build things with your hands, how to get dirty, and have some fun with some friends, good people. And I couldn't agree with you more, Ed. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, sharing your knowledge, and just talking cars and music and cool stuff, man. Thank you.
It is a pleasure. It has been a pleasure. It's an honor for me to join you with the folks you've had on here, and I really, really enjoyed it. So much fun, and it's a lot. It's just a great time. So thanks again for asking, and here anytime.
I appreciate it, Ed. Thank you so much. We will see you this Saturday. Again, check the comment section below, everybody. If you want to come hang out with me and Ed, come out on Saturday if you're in the SoCal area.
Sunday, bro. Sunday.
Oh, I keep saying Saturday. I'm sorry. Sunday. I will drop the link, and that'll give you the right date. So check out the link. Thank you, Ed.
Come out Sunday. He'll get there. We'll be there. So have a great time. Thank you, everybody, and very, very much appreciate the opportunity to enjoy it today.
All right, sir. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Greg. What up?
Hey. It's funny listening to Ed talk. He mentions, relationships, and then he brings up Doc. And man, Doc Meyer, he was the very first NMRA race I ever went to. He was my ride. And that, that's turned into a friendship. But I remember real early in my days thinking, man, everybody, that I work with knows all these people. It was so overwhelming. I'll never know that. And now 16 years later, here I am. I know, so many people. And then to see, my contemporaries, people that started real close to when I started, and, we're all friends, and how we've all branched out. And yeah, you know what? We were just at one point, guys sitting, on the wall at a drag strip taking pictures together. And now it's like you've got people in marketing positions, and you've got people, working for manufacturers. And it's like, it's fun to look back on, young me and remembering all those thoughts. And when Ed said that, it just came flooding back to me, the relationships that you build. And that is one of the coolest things of this industry.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's been a whirlwind, a few years under my belt as editor. And yeah, I mean, to your point, like, I remember the first few times that I went places with Ed, and we couldn't get anywhere because everybody kept stopping this guy, and he was just introducing me to all these people. And I was just like, dude, this guy is the coolest guy, which is why I wanted to have him on the show, because he had all these great stories. And he was around for the golden age of hot rodding. And so I'm grateful for his company. And to your point, I've really learned a lot from him about building those relationships and taking care of people, and making sure that the people that partner with us feel love. And it also helps that we share a love of all things hot rodding and music and vans too, dude. Vans. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things about working in this industry is that it's everybody's just a bunch of friends, man. And it was a good departure from what we've been seeing to have Ed on. It was cool to hang out with somebody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's nice to escape reality, even if it's just for an hour and a half.
Yeah, man. But I just mentioned Vans. And I said we just published the first article in the mini series on Project Heavy Metal. We'll drop the link in the comment section below as well. Greg, before we head out, do you have anything that on Engine Labs that you want to plug?
Yeah, we got a cool deal. It actually just popped up kind of out of the blue with Steve Morris Engines, where they test throttle body, like a Holly Sniper throttle body injection versus multi-port fuel injection. normally you don't see those kind of tests without 8 million variables. And I mean, the only variable in his test is the location of the injectors. He still uses the carburetor, throttle body, injector housing, whatever you want to call that thing, as a mechanical throttle body for the multi-port test. I mean, it's really interesting, and it's a turbo motor with no turbos, so it's not making insane power or anything. But it's a really cool, and he did a really good job of keeping things the same until he went and did a coil on plug test too. But that's in the article, but not really, because it's different. But
I don't want to ask you so much about it, but I'm gonna have to do like our readers and just go read it, because I don't want you to give away the whole thing here.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, the results are. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't expect to see as much difference as there was.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, with the leaps and bounds that manufacturers have made with direct port, I mean,
it's. I didn't think that it would be, of course there's going to be tunability because you can adjust, cylinder to cylinder trims and stuff. But I figured, he's shooting for the same AFRs and same timing. He's not optimizing anything. He's not optimizing one setup and then optimizing another. He's literally taking this setup and adding it to this, and that's it.
I'd be interested in to find out find out the results of a test for longevity, because if there's a knock on direct injection, I think that's been it, right?
Well, it's not direct injection; it's multi-port fuel injection. So it's just runner versus throttle body.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is, it really pokes the whole carburetor versus EFI debate.
Right.
And I actually referenced that in the article. But I will say this. I want everybody to take away. There is no hard and fast. One thing is always better than the other. It's always situational. I just want that's the point I really want to get across with the article, is that things are situational, and there are situations where a carburetor setup will make more power, and there's a situation where EFI will make more power, and there's a situation where sometimes a throttle body injected setup would be the right call over a multi-port setup.
We have a lot of people in the comment section on Street Muscle who knock fuel injected engines in classic cars. So that would be an interesting examination. So definitely we'll drop the link to that article in the comment section below as well. Give it a read, especially if you knock carburetors or if you knock fuel injection.
And that's the thing, dude. It's always going to be what you like. Let's face it. That's 90% of anything we do. It's what you like, right?
Yeah.
Like in life. Like what's 10 horsepower if you want a car sitting on the top of your engine?
Yeah, but that's second kind of cool. You know what I mean? If you got a tunnel ram with dual quads and you're doing it because you like the way it looks and it's period correct, cool. But are you making concessions as far as power? Who's to say?
Now that you can run, dual quad looking EFI.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the things where I just genuinely didn't expect to be as impressed just by the market as I am. And that was the carburetor lookalike EFI, and the way technology has taken off. I've just been blown away, and I have done a complete 180 on that technology. I love it. It's awesome.
I'm curious how Street Muscle's readers and fans would feel, because I mentioned last week that 71 El Camino project that we recently picked up, and how I want to do it in like day 2 style with vintage parts if we can find them, and that includes I would love to do a big block with nitrous and the tunnel ram, dual quads, the whole thing. If that's not feasible, then we might stick with the small block that's in there and still do a tunnel ram with dual quads. But I'm curious if our fans would prefer to see, real deal with carburetors and, the whole thing, or going fuel injected. Does that make it less cool? I don't know. Drop your opinion in the comment section below, you guys.
I don't know, but if you did go EFI, it would a lot of the stuff you and I have talked about as far as tuning and the nitrous stuff.
Yeah, that's all different.
we could have a ton of fun. That's all I'm gonna say. It gets wild at that point.
But the bottom end of that engine.
Well, it's a lot of fun when you drive over your own crank on the street. I mean,
not when you slick down the whole track for everyone else, man.
Oh, I'm not talking about the track. I'm talking about out in front of your house.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, we'll see. What do you guys want to see? Fuel injection? Keep it carbureted? Let us know. For now, check out streetmusclemag.com, check out enginelabs.com, check out all the titles under powerautomedia.com, and check back with us next week. I think next week we'll probably do a show with Greg and myself, where we might go over some current events. We might have a special guest again. Who knows? Check back next week, noon Pacific time. We'll be here. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.
Later.